and thank you for your service at your U.S. Army, and all of you who serve as well. Thank you. When we talk about generations that have sacrificed and done the difficult chores of their time so that we can have the ability to do this here today, we really thank the men and women in uniform that serve us now and serve us in the past. You touched on two issues. The first really is a function of sanctuary cities. There are cities in America like San Francisco that brag. They brag about the fact that if you come there, they don't report you to federal law enforcement agencies. And I don't think they should be receiving federal funding. It's one of the reasons why this recent deal that was cut, this Omni deal at the end of the year or so, wrong, is that it didn't deal with that issue. I agree with you. It's frustrating to see that these funds continue to flow to jurisdictions that openly brag about the fact that they do not cooperate, even when it comes to criminal aliens. Now, you asked the issue, why can't we seal the border? Be careful. I always caution the word seal, because there's a lot of trade in the borders. It's not about sealing it. It's about protecting the border from unlawful entry. What is the border? Well, the border is the border with Mexico and Canada, but our border is also the airport. 40% of the people in this country illegally entered legally. How that works is you get a 90-day visa as a tourist or a student or a business person. You come to America on the visa. You're not illegal. You enter legally. The visa expires, and you don't leave. Now you're here illegally. That's 40% of the problem in America, is that. And in Florida, it's much higher than 40%. So you have to deal with that part of it, too. And the way you deal with that part of it is through an entry-exit tracking system that's fed into an E-Verify system. In essence, we know when people come in, you log in when you come in, the 90-day clock starts. If on the 90th day you haven't logged out, we know you haven't left. And now your name is fed into E-Verify, and we know that you're here illegally, and you can't find a job. Today, we don't do that consistently. Most of the people that overstay, we don't know if they left or not, so we have no idea that they're here. That's 40%. The other 60% enter illegally, some from the northern border, a lot from the southern border. And though they come through Mexico, they're not all from Mexico. They are increasingly coming from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, because those countries have become very violent places, and people are desperate. And so they make this very dangerous journey because they know people that have made it. So it invites them to do the same. What will it take to seal it? Well, number one, not every part of the border is the part that people cross. There are parts of the border that you really can't cross because they're so dangerous you'll never make the journey. And even if you crossed, there's no highway system nearby. How do you get to a city? So there are very specific corridors that people use to cross the border. And they are usually places that are close to a major highway. So when they cross, someone can pick them up and then drive them into a major city. And those are the areas we need to focus on, with 700 miles of real fencing. Today we have about 350 miles of real fencing and walls, and the other 350 miles are what they call pedestrian fencing, which basically means cones or those big X things that they put on the ground, barriers that people can just walk right around. You need 700 miles of that completed. It was required by law. A few years later, Congress went back and took the money out and never did it. So that has to be done. We probably need an additional 20,000 border agents, personnel, because we just don't have enough people. And then you can use the other technologies you talk about, the drones, the sensors, and so forth, to secure these key corridors. If you combine all of that with entry-exit tracking and an E-Verify system, so that in order to hire someone, you have to run them through this database that's reliable, you will see the number of illegal immigrants dramatically diminish. The number will come down because people make the journey because they think they can come. They think they can get in. Once they know that that's not as easy, it'll discourage them from making this dangerous journey. As an aside, I would say that this is one of the reasons why we have a vested interest in what's happening in Honduras and in Guatemala and in El Salvador. Because as long as there's violence there, people are going to have an interest in leaving and coming here. And so that's why I've taken such an interest in something called the Alliance for Prosperity. Or the Alliance for Prosperity. The Alliance for Progress was the one that Kennedy did. That helps those countries help themselves. There's been success in this in the past. Colombia was a failed state 20 years ago. Today, they're one of our strongest allies in the region. In fact, the Colombians, who we used to help defeat narco-traffickers, now Colombia is helping other countries defeat narco-traffickers. So there are some other things we need to do to stem the flow, and here's my last point on this. Do you remember 2 years ago, the horrifying images of little children coming by themselves across the border? It's happening again. In the last 6 weeks, there has been a substantial surge in the number of unaccompanied minors crossing the border. Once again, we are facing this problem again. It's happening again. And so this is going to be an ongoing issue until we deal with it in the way that I outlined. And you're not going to be able to do anything on immigration until you do this issue first. because the American people are not going to support doing anything on this issue until you first and foremost deal with illegal immigration. And we know how to do it. We're just not doing it. Where's the other microphone? All right, so you'll find this gentleman here. Yes. Yes, sir.
Senator, we're talking about immigration. What can we do about the 11 to 15, 20 million people that are here already? As you said, we don't even know who they are or where they are. But it's a problem. What can we do about that?
Well, first, there's some that are not going to be able to stay. They've committed crimes. They haven't been here long enough. You know, someone that came last year or 8 years ago or 7, 10, even 10, there has to be a cutoff point. So there are some people that just will not be able to stay. So that's the first part. The second part is we won't be able to do anything on it until we do what I just said first. I think the vast majority of Americans, and obviously, you know, not everybody agrees with me on this, but I think the vast majority of Americans understand we're going to have to do something reasonable with some of the people that have been here for a long time. But we're not doing anything until you bring this problem under control. What they're basically saying is, we'll deal with this now, once and for all, but not if it's going to happen all over again. Not if in 10 years we're going to be facing another people. And what's really set the groundwork was in 1986. In 1986, Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 3 million people who were in this country illegally. But they never followed through on the security part of it. And so 10 or 15 years later, 3 million people legalized, you had another 11 or 12 million people came. Because word gets back. You know, one of the reasons we had that migratory crisis on the border is because these trafficking groups were going into Honduras and telling people, hey, in America, they just passed a law that if children come, they can stay. That's not the way the law worked, even though I disagreed with what the president did, but that's what the word of mouth became. And so people were sending their kids because they thought there was this law that allowed kids to come and stay in America. So if you do this the wrong way, word will get back. America's allowing people to come illegally, and doing this will lure more people to come. So it all begins by doing what I just said. You've got to bring illegal immigration under control, and it's not just about passing a law. People have to see that it's in place and that it's working. Once they see that it's in place and that it's working, the second thing you're going to have to do is modernize our legal immigration system. So every year we admit 1 million people into the United States permanently. We give 1 million green cards a year, more or less. No other country comes close to that number, okay? And you can debate about whether it's too large, too little. It fluctuates from year to year. The primary criteria used for the green card is, do you have a relative in America? It's a family-based system. Relatives come, and then they claim you, and you come, and then you claim somebody else, and they come. We can't do it that way in the 21st century. This is a skills-based economy. And therefore, we have to have a skills-based system and a merit-based system of immigration, where the primary criteria for bringing someone to America is what can they do? What skills do they have? What business are they going to open? Not simply, who do you know? And after you've done those two things, then I think we have to realistically deal with the people that are already here. They've been here longer than 12 years. They haven't committed a crime, meaning they can pass a background check. They have to learn English. They have to pay a fine. There will be a financial consequence for what they did. They're going to have to be working, paying taxes. They don't qualify for federal benefits, and all they get is a work permit. And that's all they're going to have for at least a decade. It's just a work permit that allows them to work and pay taxes. No federal benefits, no citizenship, none of that stuff. After 10 years have elapsed, I personally am open to allowing them to apply for a green card like anybody else would, not through a special process. Some people just say leave them with a work permit and that's all they can ever have. You can have that debate after. But the point is that you can't do any of these things that I've just discussed until you first do the border security part that we just talked about. You just won't have the votes to do it, and it wouldn't be right to do it, not given what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years.
My name is Dick Wagner. My question is, there's so many people that vote that don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's beside the point. But the thing, what I'm getting at is...
There's a lot of people you vote for that don't know what they're doing.
But, you know, they've been talking about voter registration, voter ID, voter test, voter this, voter that. But isn't there some way we can get it under control so we know who's voting and those that are dead can't vote and things of that nature?
Well, I agree that people shouldn't be allowed to vote. But that's one of the largest precincts in Chicago, so I mean it would be. No, I agree that the security of the ballot box is a real issue. I have always supported, and I don't understand why anyone can be against IDs being shown in order to vote. You need an ID to use a credit card. You need an ID to get on an airplane. You need an ID to do all kinds of things. And so most of the office buildings now in the big cities don't let you in unless you show an ID. So we require it all the time. One of the arguments against it is, well, poor people can't afford an ID. Okay, make them free. Make them free. If in fact you prove that you cannot afford an ID, the government should be able to provide. It's not that expensive. It's an ID. My point is that I do believe that we should be able to do that because it's important to protect the sanctity of the vote and ensure that there isn't manipulation of the system being used. And I don't know, that's a majority position in this country. That's a 70 or 80% issue in America. And I agree. Unfortunately, under this current president and this current Justice Department, they go after that as a sort of discrimination. But again, I mean, everywhere that's used it, it's worked fine. In South Carolina, they have a system where they've been able to help people get IDs that can't afford it or don't even have the transportation to go get it. I agree 100% with the notion that if you show up to vote, you should be required to show some sort of government-issued ID to ensure that you are who you say you are.
What are you going to do for education in schools if you're president?
Thank you for. How old are you? 10. How old? 11. So 6th grade? 5th grade. Oh, you're an old 11. You're like the next year over. I only know because I have a 10-year-old son, so that's why I asked. The question's about education. That's a good question. Let me tell you, the education, 6th, 5th grade, K through 12, that doesn't belong in the federal government. That's a local issue. That's why I never supported Common Core. It's not that I don't support curriculum reform. I want our curriculum to be better, but why do we need a national curriculum? Let our local communities set their curriculum. You know why? Because if something's going on in your school that you don't like, your parents can go complain to the school board. But if what's going on in your school that they don't like is because of something we did in Washington, you know how hard it is to go find somebody to talk to at the Department of Education or in the halls of Congress? So I believe K through 12 education belongs at the local level. And at the local level with our school boards and our local state legislators, because that's closer to the people. I also think you're going to get better results. All the innovation in American education has come at the local and state level, all of it. There's no innovation coming out of Washington on any issue, not to mention education. And one of the reasons why is because this is a practical thing people haven't thought through, but think about it this way. If Iowa is trying to attract a new manufacturing plant away from Missouri, one of the things your governor is going to go tell them is, you should move your manufacturing plant to Iowa because we have better schools and we have a better career training system. So now you have an incentive for states to improve themselves because they're competing against other states to attract business and attract jobs. And it is that competition that's going to drive excellence in our school systems. And so that's why I support leaving it at the local and state level. The one place where I think the federal government can help on the margins is something called the corporate tax credit. Here's how scholarship. Here's how that would work. We would allow companies to pay a portion of what they owe in federal taxes. Instead of paying it to the federal government, we would allow you to donate that portion, 10% of your taxes, 15%, whatever we settle at, to donate a portion of your federal tax bill to a scholarship organization that gives scholarships to poor families who cannot afford to send their kids to the school of their choice. And that will allow us to fund these local scholarship organizations who give scholarships for private school tuition to families who, because of their zip code, are trapped in a failing school and therefore cannot send their kids to a faith-based education or to a better school. We have that in Florida. We have a corporate scholarship program in Florida, and close to 70,000 students in our state of low-income households have been able to go to a private school or a charter school or another public school of their choice, of their parents' choice, and it's provided real educational choice. Because it comes down to this: who should be in charge of our children's educational future? Our parents or our bureaucrats? Our parents or our politicians? I believe in empowering parents, and that's why I support school choice, and the tax credit is a small way that we can help provide that for more people across this country.
First off, I want to say thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
My question is, will you stand with Governor Branstad and Senator Grassley by supporting the wind production tax credit, which has helped create thousands of jobs here in Iowa?
No, because you won't need it under my tax plan. My tax plan allows every business, including wind business and everybody else, to fully and immediately expense every penny they invest in their business. So let's use this one as an example. You buy a piece of equipment, and it costs $50,000. How much does this cost? Who knows? $25,000, $10,000, $20,000. Now you write that off on a schedule of depreciation over X number of years. Under my tax plan, you'll be able to write off the $20,000 that same year. So the reason why we have all these tax credits and so forth is to help businesses get around now. In essence, they're asking for treatment to help us equalize with another business who gets a tax credit, whether it's oil or some other coal, whatever other industry. Under my plan, everybody will be treated the exact same way. Everyone will be able to fully and immediately expense that investment. You've created parity, and now you have a fair opportunity to compete. By the way, wind is becoming increasingly cost-effective. It means that it's getting closer and closer to being marketable straight up against any other energy. And I've already told you guys that I am in favor of the broadest portfolio possible. I don't want this country that's 90% natural gas or 90% coal, not for environmental reasons alone, but because I want us to have the most diverse portfolio possible. Because if there's a downturn in one source, you're not overly dependent on it. Also, it creates jobs. These are job-creating sectors as well. But I think it has to be driven by the market. And the way we can help the market drive it is to eliminate all the special preferences for and allow everyone to be treated the exact same way through a tax code that allows you to fully and immediately expense. Not to mention the other things we're going to do for business, like lower the corporate and business tax rate for everyone to no more than 25%, like removing all taxes on investment so that more money is invested back into these sorts of things, like getting after some of these regulatory agencies that are making it impossible for some businesses to thrive. This will create parity and equality, and it will allow people to now compete on the basis of their merit, not on the basis of how many lobbyists they have working for them in Washington, D.C., which is what's happened not just in energy, but in every industry. So I just think that approach is a better and fairer way that creates equality across the sector and allows energy resources to compete fairly, as opposed to require a special provision in order to allow them to compete with some other resource that already has a special provision.
Senator, due to time constraints, that was the last question.
The what now?
That was the last question.
Oh, it was. You should have told me that. I would have gone on longer. Well, look, we're going to be back quite a bit. In fact, a lot now. As we get closer here for the next 6 weeks. We're going to leave you alone Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. When's the Rose Bowl? We'll leave you alone that day, too. Is that the second or the first? The first. All right. We'll also leave you alone on the first. But other than that, I can't promise you we're going to leave you alone. Because we really want to win. And we don't just want to win for us. We want to win for us, the country. I honestly and truly believe we have a chance to do something special in this generation. I know that times are tough. I really do. I know economically it's uncertain. I know that from a security perspective, people are afraid. The other day, there's a couple that I know, they're in our social circles. They're known as putting together the best end-of-year trips, right? Right after Christmas, they leave for 10 days, and it's always some great trip, and everybody wants to be a part of it. They're not going anywhere this year because they're scared. They're scared. I was shocked when they told me, we're not going anywhere with ISIS and all that. I was like, how's ISIS going to get to, Boone, North Carolina? But you don't know anymore. So people are scared. So I get all of this. But I also want you to understand, yes, we need to be very realistic about our challenges, and we should be very upset that our political leadership in Washington and both political parties seem so out of touch with what's happening in our lives. But we can turn this around. There is no reason why this, the greatest country in the world, cannot be greater than it's ever been. But we have to do it in this election. And I hope you'll give me the chance to do it as your president, starting in the caucuses here in Iowa. So I'm truly, once again, asking for your support, and I thank you for coming today. Thank you.